Welcome to Sunny's Mindset Lab podcast. Today, we're exploring 4,000 Weeks with its author, Oliver Burkeman. This conversation is about time, limitation, and what it really means to live a meaningful life when our time is finite.
Thank you, Sunny. It's great to be here. That's really the heart of it. 4,000 Weeks was written to help people come to terms with the fact that time is limited, and that this limitation isn't some problem we're supposed to solve, but actually the reality we get to live with.
Oliver, let's start right there with that title, 4,000 Weeks. I have to be honest, when I first encountered it really landed. It felt like a bit of a punch to the gut. It's just so specific, so stark. It's not some vague concept like a short life or making time count. It's a number. Why did you choose to confront people so directly right on the cover?
Well, it really is just a simple calculation. If you're lucky enough to make it to 80 years old, you will have lived for about 4,000 weeks. And the reason to put it that bluntly is for exactly the effect you just described. It's meant to take this abstract idea, life is short, which, let's be honest, we've all heard a million times and we're kind of numb to it, and it's meant to make it feel real, visceral. When you see it as a number, you can't just nod along vaguely. You have to face it. It stops being a philosophical notion and becomes, well, a concrete inventory of the time you might actually have. And for centuries, philosophers have basically argued that this brevity is the defining problem of being human. We have these incredible capacities to dream up infinite plans and ambitions, but we're given this, as I say in the book, absurdly, terrifyingly, insultingly short amount of time to do any of it.
It absolutely highlights that disconnect, doesn't it? Because I think day to day, most of us, myself included, we operate as if we have an infinite supply of time. We think, oh, I'll get to that important thing someday, or I'll finally learn that skill someday. As if someday is this huge guaranteed territory just waiting for us in the future. We just don't think in terms of weeks.
No, we don't. Our intuitive sense of time is completely out of whack with reality. I tell this story in the book where, just as a little experiment, I asked a friend to guess off the top of her head how many weeks an average person gets. Her guess was a six-figure number. And that's just fascinating, right? Because a modest six-figure number, like, say, 310,000 weeks, that's roughly the entire span of recorded human history, from the ancient Sumerians until now. So her gut feeling for one lifetime was the same length as all of civilization. That's just how deeply we deny our own constraints. We treat time like it's this abstract resource we can manage or conquer, when the truth is, it's the very stuff of our life. It's what we are.
And it seems like that denial leads directly into this very modern condition of just perpetual overwhelm, right? This cult of busyness. We have more technology, more productivity apps, more life hacks than at any point in history, all promising to save us time. And yet, almost everyone I know feels more frantic, more anxious about their to-do list than ever before. Why do you think all our attempts to manage time and get more productive seem to just backfire and make us feel worse?
It's what I came to call the efficiency trap. And the central problem is that our methods for getting more efficient, they actually work, but they backfire. The better you get at processing things, the more things you'll be given to process. Email is the perfect example. A few years ago, I got really into the whole inbox zero thing. Had all the rules, the fancy filters, and it worked. I became this machine for answering emails. But the result wasn't some zen-like state of peace. The result was that everyone in my professional life learned, oh, Oliver is a guy who replies to email really, really fast. So what was the reward for all my efficiency? More email. My inbox just started filling up faster. The system is designed to generate more for you to do. The more you clear, the more comes your way.
Yeah, there's this great metaphor from the anthropologist Edward T. Hall. He described modern time as this unstoppable conveyor belt, bringing us new tasks as quickly as we can handle the old ones. And when you get more productive, you're not actually clearing the belt, you're just making the belt speed up. You're trying to clear the decks, but the very act of clearing them just signals to the world to put more things on the decks. The entire logic of the productivity world is based on this false promise that one day, if you just find the right system, you'll finally have everything under control, you'll be on top of it all, but that day is never going to arrive. So the only way off that speeding conveyor belt is to start by admitting that you will never, ever get it all done. You have to start by admitting defeat.
Okay, admitting defeat. That is such a radical phrase, especially in our culture that is just obsessed with winning, with optimizing everything, with crushing it. It sounds a lot like just giving up. So if the answer isn't to struggle harder and find an even better system, what's the alternative?
The alternative is to stop fighting a battle that you are absolutely guaranteed to lose, and instead to start embracing what philosophers call our finitude. It's an idea that comes from Martin Heidegger, and it's a really profound shift in perspective. He argued that our limited time isn't just one feature of our lives, like having brown hair or being a certain height. He said it's the very structure of our existence. We don't have a finite amount of time. It's more accurate to say that we are a finite amount of time. Our entire being is defined by this one limited stretch between birth and death. So it's not a problem we need to solve. It's the game we're actually playing.
And facing up to this finitude, it means understanding that every single choice you make is also inherently a sacrifice. One of the things that fascinated me when I was researching the book was learning that the original Latin word for to decide, decidere, literally means to cut off. So when you choose one path, one career, one person to spend your life with, even just deciding to spend this afternoon reading a book, you are by definition cutting off countless other possibilities. You are saying no to every other career you could have had, every other partner, every other way you could have spent this afternoon. A finite life is just a life of trade-offs. So that frantic attempt to get everything done, to optimize every last moment, is really an attempt to avoid the pain of making those choices, of having to wave goodbye to all those other potential lives you could have lived. I'm following you, but I can also imagine someone listening right now and thinking this all sounds, well, a bit heavy, maybe even a little morbid. All this talk of limits, death, cutting things off, waving goodbye. How do you frame this so that it's not a depressing reality we just have to resign ourselves to, but something that could actually be empowering?
I know, it does sound morbid on the surface, but I really believe it's the exact opposite. The philosopher Martin Hagland makes this point so brilliantly. He asks us to imagine what an eternal life would actually be like. If you had infinite time, why would you ever commit to anything? You could always start writing that novel next century. You could always get married in 1,000 years. No choice you make would have any weight or meaning, because there would never be anything at stake. There'd be no urgency. It's the very fact that our time is limited, that there is a deadline called death, that makes our choices matter. That finitude is what gives life its texture, its purpose, its beauty. An infinite life wouldn't really be a life at all. It would be, as one headline about this idea put it, deathly dull. The limits are what make it meaningful.
Okay, so let's say we accept this truth of finitude, that the limits are what give life meaning. How does it actually change how we approach our overstuffed daily lives? I mean, we still have jobs, families, bills to pay. How do we put this philosophy into practice on a random Tuesday afternoon?
Right, it has to be practical. It starts by completely reframing the goal. The challenge isn't about how to get everything done. It's about getting better at consciously choosing what you're not going to do. You might know that old time management parable about the rocks in the jar. The story says you should put your big rocks, your main priorities, in the jar first, then the pebbles, then the sand, and miraculously it all fits. But the problem with that neat little story is that for most of us, life gives us far too many big rocks to ever fit in the jar. The real problem isn't poor prioritization, it's having too many things that are legitimately a high priority. So you have to choose which of the big, important things you are going to consciously neglect. It means you have to become a better and more strategic procrastinator.
So in the book, I talk about a few principles for this. The first is a classic idea from personal finance, but applied to time. Pay yourself first. Just decide to give the first hour of your working day to your most important project before the world's demands come crashing in. The second is to limit your work in progress. Maybe you have a hard rule of only having 3 active projects at any one time. When a new one comes in, an old one has to be either finished or deliberately abandoned. But the third one, which I think is the most powerful, is to resist the allure of what I call middling priorities. There's this story, maybe it's not true, but it's a great story, about Warren Buffett advising his personal pilot. He tells the pilot to list his top 25 life goals. Then he tells him to circle his top 5. The pilot says, okay, great, I'll focus on the top 5, and I'll work on the other 20 in my spare time. And Buffett says, no, you've got it all wrong. The 20 you didn't circle, that's your avoid at all costs list. Those are the dangerous ones, because they are just interesting enough to distract you from what truly matters most. That idea of an avoid at all costs list, it's so powerful and so completely countercultural. It really speaks to this deeper thing we have, doesn't it? It's not just a desire for efficiency, but a feeling of wanting to be in control of our lives, and especially control over the future. We think if we can just manage our time perfectly, we can guarantee certain outcomes down the road.
Exactly. And that's another core illusion we have to see through. We talk about time as if it's a thing we have, like money in a bank account that we can spend. But you never actually possess time. You can't hold an hour in your hand. All we ever have is this one unfolding moment. We are never truly in control of the future. We can make plans, and we should, But the attempt to achieve total control over what's to come, to master it, is just a recipe for constant low-grade anxiety, because reality will always, eventually, remind us that we can't. The whole struggle to master time is a fantasy, and admitting defeat, letting go of that fantasy, is the only way to begin.
And this leads to what I call the paradox of limitation. It's totally counterintuitive, but I believe it's true. The more you struggle for that feeling of total control over your time, the more anxious and stressed out you become. Your life just gets more frustrating. But when you finally confront the facts of your finitude, when you admit you can't get it all done, you can't please everybody, and you can't control what happens next, you're suddenly freed up. You're freed up to actually engage with the messy, unpredictable, beautiful life you actually have. Confronting the limits is what leads to a more productive, more meaningful, and, surprisingly, a more joyful life. The surrender is where the freedom is hiding.
Let's talk about one of the biggest enemies of that feeling of control and one of the things that makes it so hard to engage with the life we actually have: distraction. For so many of us, modern life feels like a constant losing battle for our own attention.
It certainly feels that way, but I think it's a mistake to see this as a brand new, digital-only problem. Philosophers have been wringing their hands about distraction since ancient Greece. At its heart, distraction is really just a failure to align what we pay attention to with what we say we value. And your life, in any given moment, is whatever you are paying attention to. That's really it. So this modern goal of becoming indistractable, of achieving total command over your focus, is just another version of that same fantasy of total control. It's not only impossible, it's probably not even a good idea. You need to be distractible enough to notice an oncoming car or your child calling your name. The real challenge isn't to eliminate distraction, but to get better at noticing where our attention is going and gently bringing it back to what matters.
So much of what you're saying seems to come back to this idea of being present, of actually being here in this unfolding moment, instead of always striving for some future moment when things will finally be sorted out and perfect.
That's it. Absolutely. We're caught in this cultural trap of what you could call instrumentalization, where every moment is only valued for its usefulness for some future goal. A walk isn't just for the sake of the walk, it's for getting exercise. A hobby isn't for the pure joy of it, it's for self-improvement or maybe building a side hustle. Even rest is only justified as a way to recharge so you can be more productive at work later. To actually rest for the sake of rest, to enjoy a lazy hour for its own sake, requires accepting this profound and slightly uncomfortable truth. This is it. Your life isn't a dress rehearsal. It's not a training ground for some future state of perfect happiness. This moment, with all its flaws and imperfections, is all you ever really have.
This brings us to a final and maybe the most mind-bending idea in the book. If we're so limited, if our time is so short, and we can't possibly do everything we want, how do we find meaning in that? And you offer a very surprising answer: by embracing our own cosmic insignificance.
Right, I call it cosmic insignificance therapy. We have this idea that human civilization is this immense, ancient thing, but you can span the entire 6,000 years of it with a chain of just 60 people who lived to be 100. The Egyptian pharaohs were only about 35 lifetimes ago. The Renaissance, that was just 7 lifetimes ago. From that perspective, your life, your 4,000 weeks, it's an impossibly tiny flicker in the grand scheme of things. The universe, to put it bluntly, does not care what you do with your life. And the secret is that this is incredibly good news. It takes all the pressure off. You don't have to make a dent in the universe. You don't have to achieve some impossible standard of historical remarkableness that our culture pushes on us.
Yes, exactly. By accepting defeat, that you can't do it all and you can't control it all, and by embracing your own cosmic insignificance, you're finally free. You're free to stop trying to live up to some impossible, abstract standard, and instead to just drop down into the life that is actually yours, right here, right now. It allows you to focus on the handful of things that are genuinely deeply meaningful to you in your small corner of the world. And it lets you ask that fundamental question: what would it mean to spend this time, the only time I will ever get, in a way that truly feels like it counts? Oliver, thank you for such a thoughtful and grounding conversation. This discussion gives our listeners a very different way to think about time and life.
Thank you, Sunny. I hope this conversation helps people feel less pressured by time and more at peace with how they choose to live it.
This has been Sunny's Mindset Lab. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.